Across the vast emptiness of space, a sound echoes a roar that drowns out the stars themselves. It's louder than any explosion, more ancient than fear. It is the thunder of a billion throats crying out in perfect, glorious chaos. WAAAGH. When the Orks descend upon a world, forget everything you know about strategy, about mercy, or about retreat. They are a force of nature, a green storm pouring from the sky. Their crude, cobbled-together ships break the atmosphere, trailing smoke and fire like banners of absolute doom. To the defenders of the Imperium, it's an invasion of unspeakable horror. But to the Orks, it's a party. It's the grandest celebration imaginable. For them, war isn't just a means to an end. War is the end. It's the very reason they exist, the pounding rhythm of their violent hearts. But what happens when the fighting finally stops? What happens when the green tide has washed over everything, and the Orks actually win? It begins with a deafening silence, the kind that only follows total, world-ending destruction. A planet that once pulsed with life, with cities and defenses, now lies cracked, burning, and silent. The corpses of its defenders bake under alien suns. Mighty imperial titans, once symbols of humanity's power, stand half-sunken in mud and ruin. Their adamantium hides, scarred with the brutal marks of choppas and crude claws. Smoke drifts lazily across plains where tank divisions once made their final, desperate stand. And then, breaking that silence, comes a sound. Laughter. Deep, bellowing, primal laughter. The Orks don't mourn their dead. They don't tally the cost of victory. They stomp across the battlefield, looting everything that isn't nailed down. And Naventon, they'll just take the nails too. They shout. They argue over who got the best kills, whose Daka was the loudest, whose Shapa was the sharpest. The war might be over for now, but the WAAAGH is never truly done. You see, for an Ork, victory isn't peace. It's fuel. Once they've wiped a world clean, once every last enemy lies broken, and still they turn their joyous aggression on the only opponents left. Each other. Simple squabbles quickly escalate into deadly duels. Duels ignite into skirmishes between mobs, and those skirmishes erupt into full-blown battles. A day after the war against the planet's inhabitants ends, another war begins, this time amongst themselves. And they fight not out of hatred, but out of pure, unadulterated joy. Fighting is what keeps them alive. It's what makes them feel alive. There is no concept of civilization in an Ork victory. The gleaming cities of men become grotesque fortresses of scrap metal and jagged steel. Factories are torn apart and violently hammered back together into new, even more ridiculous war machines. The skies fill with thick, black smoke as the mech boys work their strange magic, forging new weapons from the ruins of the old. The oceans themselves turn black with spilled oil and industrial waste. The very land groans under the weight of their unending construction and destruction. Yet, in this absolute chaos, there is a strange kind of order in Ork order. It's brutal, it's simple, and it's terrifyingly effective. At the very top stands the war boss, the biggest, meanest, and most cunning Ork of them all. His word is law, enforced by his sheer, overwhelming strength. Around him gather his knobs, his personal retinue of hulking brutes. Then you have the specialists. The mech boys obsessed with building, the pain boys fascinated with surgery, and the weird boys whose heads might explode with psychic energy at any moment. The rest of the Orks follow simply because they were born to follow the biggest and the strongest. If the war boss is clever, he keeps the tribes united through constant fighting and the promise of a bigger war to come. If not, the strongest challenger will eventually rise up, and the bloody cycle of leadership begins all over again. The Orks are always at war, especially in victory. A conquered world becomes an Ork world, a living, breathing weapon. Its cities are reshaped into brutal arenas for endless conflict. Its air is permanently thick with the stench of promethium, sweat, and blood. Orks don't rebuild civilization. They infest Italiano. They don't cultivate the land. They multiply. Invisible fungal spores shed from their bodies spread through the soil, giving rise to new generations of orcs, Gretchen and Squigs. An entire ecosystem is born from the battlefield itself. 18 months, a dead world teems with new green life. Within years, it becomes a teeming, polluted, violent breeding ground for the next great invasion. Because orcs don't simply win wars, Tegrotem, where the Imperium might try to rebuild. The orcs prepare to fight again. Where humanity mourns its dead, the orcs sharpen their blades for the next kill. The ruins of the last war become the cradle for the next. And here's the strange, terrible truth. When orcs win, the galaxy loses. Forever, there is no peace. After an orc, victory only. Relentless expansion. The psychic energy of the WAAAGH cannot be contained. It builds. It grows. It amplifies through every shouting throat, every orc that joins the mob. The more orcs that gather, the stronger this psychic field becomes, and reality itself begins to warp around their collective belief. Their guns work not because of precise engineering, but because the orcs believe they should. Their ramshackle vehicles roar to life through sheer, stubborn willpower. When 1 million orcs scream for war, the universe has no choice but to listen. In the aftermath of conquest, the planet itself trembles beneath that psychic echo. Unnatural storms rise from nowhere. Fire and lightning lash the sky without cause. The ground heaves and buckles as the world itself is reshaped by orcish madness for a brief, horrifying moment. The orcs create something that almost resembles unity, not order, but pure, unstoppable momentum. The WAAAGH becomes a living entity, a force of nature tearing across the void, hungry for its next target. One world is never enough. The orcs were not made to stop, and so they move on. From the ashes of their victory, they launch crude ships patched together from wreckage, scrap, and bone. They paint them red, because everyone knows red ones go faster. They shout, and the engines obey. They fill the skies with laughter and smoke as they charge headlong toward the next glorious battle. This is what happens when the orcs win. They just keep going. They leave behind a planet stripped to its bones, crawling with new spores, its air filled with the ghostly echoes of endless, joyful laughter. The Imperium might one day return, sending soldiers and saints to reclaim their lost world. But what they find is often worse than death. They find a world that no longer remembers peace, only war. Sometimes, the Imperium decides the only solution is to burn these worlds from orbit. Exterminate us the cleansing flame. Better to have ash than infection. But, even then, as a world is turned to glass, somewhere out in the void, the orcs are still laughing, because in their minds, there is no such thing as losing. An orc that dies in a good fight dies happy. An orc that lives gets to fight again tomorrow. The concept of defeat simply does not exist for them. Even death is a kind of victory, so long as it was part of a proper scrap. They have no gods to appease, no grand purpose to fulfill, no fear of extinction. The orcs are the purest expression of war, itself a species evolved for nothing but eternal conflict. They're a dark mirror held up to every empire that has ever believed in glorious conquest. When the orcs win, the galaxy doesn't end. It just begins anew green, loud, and unendingly violent. The fires never fade. The laughter never stops. And above it all, one word echoes through the void. Forever and ever. WAAAGH. It's not just a battle cry. It's their version of creation itself, the beginning and the end of all things. In the grim darkness of the far future, the orcs never stop fighting, not because they must, but because they can't imagine doing anything else. And maybe that's what makes them the most dangerous life form of all. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into the madness of the orcs, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the 40K universe. Let me know in the comments what you think is the most terrifying aspect of an orc victory. Until next time.